Jay, how's it going? It is great to have you on the podcast. It's been way too long, my friend.
Yep, always good to talk to you, Dr. Dan. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Great to have you here. I know we've got a lot we could talk about, but I want to start out with hikethemountain.org. First of all, beautiful website. I just took a look at it again today, and I love what you have going on
Thank you.
there. Tell me a little bit about hikethemountain.org and what you're doing there, Jay.
Well, kind of if you step back and kind of look at my life, for me, I've been in ministry for full time for 30 plus years. The past 10 plus years, I have been, in addition to the being ministry full time, I've been in the corporate world, working with banks, some real estate agencies, some other nonprofits actually, on what it looks like to live out their values so that their culture becomes so that they are who they say they are, right? That's a big thing in a lot of organizations is values on the wall. I think Andy Stanley said this: values on the wall are not lived out in the hall. And so that is kind of what I've been doing with that. And so about 2 years ago, I really became focused on how to leverage that for multiple organizations. And so I built my brand around Hike the Mountain is around a passion of mine, and that is I love to go hiking. I love to be out in the woods. If I can't be in the woods, I'm gonna be walking in the neighborhood, in the street. I've got here where I live in Georgia. Um, I've got so many different loops from 5 miles to 10 miles to you name it that I can go walking and do and things like that. And so I've taken my passion and love of hiking and used that as a metaphor for. I talk about that one of the most daunting mountains any organization will ever climb is Culture Mountain, and there's a huge gap between belief and behavior, and that at the end of the day, when it comes to culture, there's a lot easier to point fingers at other people. But I really start with the only way to hike up Culture Mountain is you've got to take personal responsibility for that. And so I really kind of focused on that. And so that has become my brand as I talk to organizations, hiking up Culture Mountain, talk about kind of the switchbacks of personal development,
Mm-hmm.
talk about kind of some takeaways from the trail. I mean, we may get into this. For me, when I'm hiking up, when I was 40 years old, I'm 54 now. Some days I feel like 94, but I'm 54 now. But I set a goal, started on the Appalachian Trail in Springer Mountain. Wanted to hike the entire Appalachian Trail over the next 10 years before I turned 50. I didn't quite do that, but I'm 54. I've hiked 1,570 point. I looked it up today. 1,570.8 miles. I'm into Massachusetts, and so with that, I've learned a lot of things along the way when I've gone hiking and doing those kinds of things, and I just figured that there had to be a way to take my passion and take something that I have literally experienced through blood, sweat, and tears, and translate that into principles and practices that people can implement in their individual lives and organizationally to help them. I always say it's on my website. It says this: help people get from where they are to where they want to be, and that's kind of what Hike the
Absolutely.
Mountain's all about.
We talk about that a lot in my field of logotherapy, this healthy tension of where people are and where they want to be and embracing. I mean, what a great metaphor. I mean, embracing that tension or hiking up that mountain, that culture mountain. Now, Jay, I'll tell you, hiking is a big passion of mine as well. I don't get to get out there as much as you are. I don't think I've done 1,500 miles yet, but well, we will get to that because we definitely want to talk about that. I'm curious when you say helping organizations with culture, right? We hear that a lot lately. Organizations, well, hopefully we do. More organizations recognizing the importance of culture and changing it. But in your experience, like, what is it that you're finding out there in organizational culture? What is culture?
Well, I think if Dan, if you ask 100 people, you may get 100 different definitions. Because I think first and foremost, culture starts with the individual. I think I have a personal culture for myself. And then when you put more of us together, the blending of those individual cultures towards something that is accepted organizationally, this is where we want to go. And so typically, I would define culture this: It is taking our beliefs and putting our behaviors to those. And if we will put those two things together, I don't think you can separate either of those out. There's a lot of, here's what I know, been in ministry for a long time. There's a lot of great principles I know. I can quote unquote preach a lot of great stuff, right? But my message doesn't stick unless I live what I'm preaching. And I don't think culture sticks unless what we believe in our behavior is married together. And so here's what I know: every organization has a culture, no matter what, good, bad, or indifferent. And culture at its heart is built either by design, somebody, and that somebody is you individually and then collectively as an organization, but it's either built by design or by default, right?
Yeah.
If you ignore something, doesn't mean it's not continuing to happen. And so, too often, what happens is products and services in an organization take the bulk of the attention. And what happens is culture takes the back seat. And what most organizations don't realize is you may have the greatest product and service, but if you don't have a culture of people that are unified in moving those products and services forward together, it's like having a great life preserver, but nobody's going to throw it because nobody wants to step up and say, I'll be the one to throw it, or they're going to go, no, you don't get to throw it, I'm going to throw it. And so the person ends up drowning because we're arguing about the life preserver in the boat, if you will.
Yeah,
And so
you know,
that
that's
when I think
that's
about
such a
culture that way.
I love that. I just heard a story this morning about a company we all know, most of us use. So you talk about a great service with great products. Unfortunately, the culture is so bad. They are mostly known to be just a horrible place to work, and that's kind of sad. Like you said, culture is present. We can't escape culture. It's either positive or negative, and a lot of companies, unfortunately, when they let it go, culture becomes negative because the focus becomes on the products, on the services, and not on the people um, making them, presenting them. So, what is it that you're able to do to help an organization kind of shape that culture in a more positive direction?
Um, I probably approach that two different ways. One is from an informational standpoint of giving them a plan of, from a culture standpoint, one, that everybody has personal responsibility in it, and that a culture that fosters trust will find that teamwork is accomplished. And if trust and teamwork are happening, then what happens is this: is people are connected and that culture is communicated so that it's beginning to be lived out. So if you take apart what I just said, there's kind of five pieces to me, five important pieces of culture. Personal responsibility being first and foremost number one to me. But trust, teamwork, communication, and connection, those additional four pieces of culture. And one of the things that I do is either from an informational standpoint, I can help to train people on, one, what is trust and how to build it, what is teamwork and how to foster that, uh, what is communication and a plan to implement that, and connection, and that's providing opportunities for people to not just, one of the quotes I love, I say this often when I speak, is this: is that you can't speak into someone's life until you're in someone's life. And I think that's what connection is. And so I kind of lay that out for an organization. Then I have a game plan for them to how to do that. So I've got a communication game plan, kind of like 7 big steps of doing that from individually all the way out to the entire organization of what that looks like, and take each of those other pieces that way as well. So that's what I do, is I take them through that, living those things out. To me, if there was a mountain range of culture, the 5 peaks would be personal responsibility, trust, teamwork, communication, and connection.
That's beautiful. I love the metaphor and the analogy because some of those can be pretty significant mountains to climb. Now, the one you started, the place where this all begins is personal responsibility. And in my field of logotherapy and in psychology of meaning, right? responsibility, the ability to respond, ideally in a healthy and positive way, but sometimes not. That's a key characteristic. So when you say personal responsibility, right, what does that mean to you, or to the work that you do?
I think personal responsibility is, if in an organization, let's just say you're in an organization, you're a bank, you're a real estate agency, you're a doctor's office, you're a you know a landscape crew, whatever it may be. Is personal responsibility is this: is first of all, I am not expecting more out of others than I'm willing to give myself.
Mhm.
So I was always taught when you point the finger at somebody, you've got what, three of them pointing back at you, right? And so personal responsibility is this: is that I first of all am living up to the agreed upon expectations organizationally. I take responsibility for that. And then it's asking the question as I grow. Personal responsibility is this: is as I grow and change in myself, what do I need to start? What do I need to stop? I look at that in my life. I ask those difficult questions, right? Of, um, you know, gosh, right now it's just look at the past couple of years. If ever there has been a past couple of years that say change is inevitable and always going to happen, and we've all lived that. And there's a lot of different words for that we've all gone
Amen.
through. But at the end of the day, my personal responsibility, before I expect somebody else to change, to start something or stop something, I've got to be willing to do that myself. So that to me is what is personal responsibility in that, and stop waiting for quote unquote them to show up, because they never do. What I've learned is this: is them is me, right? That's ultimately, because you wait around for them to do it, then I've
And
never met them when
yeah,
it comes to
yeah.
that.
You wait for them, it ain't ever going to happen, right? Always waiting for them to rescue or fix or change. That idea of personal responsibility, we got to take action, right? And that's a lot of what I talk about, is this idea that taking healthy, positive action. If each one of us could do that, right? If we all took just a little bit more personal responsibility to be healthier, more positive, to create that culture. I mean, what an amazing community world we would have. And that idea that I love this idea that you are getting out there and sharing that message through speaking and through your work with different companies. Now, one of the things you shared with me, I love this. As we were talking before we hit the record button, your mission in life, right? You had 4 words there. Um,
Yep.
Tell me about those 4 words, Jay.
Yeah. So for me, I'm a person of faith, and what I kind of really I felt like the Lord was leading me to about 12 years ago now was these 4 words of this is basically, Jay, this is who you are. This is what you're to be. This is what you're to do. I'm supposed to preach, teach, coach, and serve. In my mind, I view those as 4 lanes of traffic.
Hmm.
And if I drive in one of those 4 lanes, I am valuable to people and I am fulfilled in myself. If I get out of those 4 lanes, there's a wreck coming and I am frustrated. That's the way it works. So I've just kind of identified that for me: preach, teach, coach, and serve. That if it falls in one of those lanes, I go for it.
That's
Um,
awesome. And one of the things we talk about, right? So I know there's a few coaches out there listening, and specifically a few football coaches that I know of. And you said, now you are the character coach for the local football team.
yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think
So
more football teams need to have that, first of all. But go ahead. What is a character coach?
yeah, that's a great question right there. It's not. Hopefully, I'm not a character is the thing, but the character coach is this. It's the person on the team that comes along beside the players individually. That a lot of times, when either from a performance standpoint on the field, or performance in the schoolwork, or things that are going on in the individual player's family, I get a chance to kind of speak into their lives there. I kind of view it this: there's the good cop, bad cop, right? The normal football coach is the bad cop that's out there, busting heads, getting things going, doing that kind of stuff. And I'm the one that kind of comes around and says, okay, well now, Steve, when Coach was saying that, it's not that he doesn't believe you. He just believes more that there is more from you. And let's talk about what that looks like. And so that's kind of a role that I play that way. That I get to kind of put some practical life principles around the lessons that they learn on the field. Maybe that's a good way to say it.
I think that's awesome, Jay. And I know that grumpy, trollish, barking coach personally. And right now he's probably out there running, listening to this, maybe tripping over himself. That maybe he needs a character coach, but if nothing else, I think that's just awesome for a team to have that, right? A character coach. That's more teams need that, not just football, but imagine if we organizations working on culture or companies. One of the last leadership conferences I went to, that was one of the things that talked about. So many companies today talk about culture and bringing people together and mental health and wellness and helping individuals. But unfortunately, they talk about it, but there often isn't more than a few dollars spent on it. And that if we had a character coach or a culture coach for these organizations, like you, like me, like some of the people we know, oh
Mm-hmm.
man, it would be amazing what some of these businesses could do. All of a sudden, the return on investment, latest studies say, the return on investment in some kind of work like that is unbelievably positive.
Yep. Well, and that's really the role that I've played with a community bank here in Georgia for
Hmm.
almost 10 years now. I was hired. My official title. I started out with them as a full time employee with the bank while I was doing ministry stuff as well. But I started out as a full time employee. Over the couple of years, I kind of stepped away from that and have been consulting with them in a similar role. But my title was Excellence Innovation Coach to begin with, and my role, my customers, if you will, were every employee.
Hmm.
And the way I would go around and introduce myself, hi, I'm Jay. I want to be your friend, and I'm not here on behalf of HR or any of the C-level folks. I just want to be in your life and let me know. And so I would always tell them this. I'd say, look, if you need somebody to walk into your office, close the door, and you want to shout out a bunch of bad words, you can do that with me, and everything will be okay, and we'll be all right. And you know what? A lot of times my greatest thing that I ever did was not something I did besides just listen and let them share. And I'm blown away that problems that are so big, when somebody has a chance to just verbalize those with somebody else, a lot of times those problems are greatly diminished because they've been able to just verbalize it and be able to say, this is going on. I don't know how to do this. I'm not there to be the answer man for them often as much
Be
as I
careful
am,
there,
not
Jay,
to be the
because
counselor either, but
right, well, and I
just
was
to
just going to
listen.
say, like, um, be careful because look, I know there are a few people here listening, but we're going to give away one of those secrets of psychotherapy that good psychotherapy, good results from psychotherapy are often produced just by having somebody listen to you, by being able to say whatever you need to say those bad words, to say those thoughts that you're like, oh, nobody can ever hear these, to an objective person, maybe somebody trained and educated in that, to be able to say,
Yep.
hey, that's okay. We all have thoughts like that. We all need to get some bad words out every once in a while, some bad ideas, so that we can be healthier. Just having somebody to listen can be in the world we live in. Too often, we don't have anybody in our personal lives that will just sit down, be quiet, listen, and nod their head like we do. And that's the secret of psychotherapy. That is the secret of just good connection and good rapport building. And I mean, with you and your personality and your experience, you truly are a blessing to those people that you get to serve. So that's really awesome.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that encouragement.
Absolutely.
I
Well, and let me offer this too. For those people that want some of Jay's encouragement, Jay, I love your Instagram page. Can you talk a little bit about that? That's so awesome.
Yeah. So on Instagram, I'm just at Jay at Hike the Mountain. Is if you want to connect up with me. And as mentioned about hiking and stuff like that, I try. My goal I set 2 years ago was to walk 20,000 steps a day. Haven't quite got that. I've averaged about 12,000 a day. But I go out and I walk, and a lot of times what I simply do is I'll take my phone and things that I am learning. Now you probably know the science behind this, but what I have found is that the best way for me to learn something and to personalize it for myself is to teach that or share that with somebody else. So I constantly 2 or 3 times a week will put up, I call it a walk and talk video, where I'm just talking to my phone and going, I was listening to this podcast the other day. This person said this. This is what I learned from that. Here's 2 takeaways from me. And I always close that, the way I say, if you hike the mountain, you do it one step at a time, hike on, my friends. But I just share those things I'm learning. And I've been a little overwhelmed by response from people I had no idea that were actually watching and listening to that. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, those are usually 3 to 5 minutes long. I mean, if people actually listen to that, I mean, 15 seconds, I'm impressed. If I listen to something for 15 seconds,
Right.
and I've got so much response from that of people going, "Thanks for sharing," or "That was right for me today," or those kinds of things. And so that's what I do with my Instagram is I just try to share my journey, what I'm learning, and hopefully that's an encouragement to other people in their journey.
I know it was to me. I love, checking in and seeing. Now, personally, I try to stay away from social media as much as possible, but yours, Jay, is certainly a source of positivity and one I enjoy seeing every once in a while. I think, where Facebook can be often very negative and really bring you down. Personally, for me, I cultivate an Instagram page with pretty places I want to go visit and inspirational people like yourself. And I certainly appreciate the work you're putting in there.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been, again, you said something a minute ago about companies and organizations basically giving lip service to the value of culture and the value of having someone who's focused on that. But there's a huge difference between knowing something and doing something. And that was what I really with social media is I just with those little videos, I'm trying to take what I know and turn it into something that I do. And the best way I know to do that is to share that with somebody else. And subconsciously, I think what's going on with me is that's building accountability in my life. If I'm going to say that out there publicly, then I'm not perfect and I don't live all of those principles out. I know that. But there is some built-in accountability that comes with that for me.
Oh, absolutely. It's funny. Many of the listeners here have heard this story too many times or may be prepared to roll their eyes. But when I was in grad school studying the psychology, meaning logotherapy, existential analysis, everything, every paper I wrote, my professors were so tired of hearing from me. I'm like, man, more people need to know about this. More people need, oh my goodness, this is groundbreaking. Like the idea that we're in a search for meaning and there are different ways to find meaning in life and how to do that. And finally, when I got done with school, I said, oh no, I've been saying this for years. Now I have to go do it. And that's what this
Yeah.
podcast is all about, is getting that message out there, connecting with like-minded people like yourself, being like, hey, we have to share this, right? There are so many better ways to go about living, healthier ways to live life, to hike the mountain, to go to work and enjoy work, that we need to get that information out there to people. And I just love the fact that you and I get to do this kind of stuff in Indiana, in Georgia, and all across the country and the
Yeah.
world. And that people are actually listening to it. And you're right. Now, just like the old idea, never, or let's see, how's that go? Never trust a skinny chef. You should never trust an unhealthy coach or psychotherapist, right? Because
Yeah.
we preach it, we teach it, but we got to do it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's where the rubber meets the road in all of our lives. If we really want to go back to the phrase, get from where we are to where we want to be,
Mm-hmm.
then there's action that has to be taken. And one of the things I've learned hiking is that the only way to hike the mountain is one step at a time, and nobody can take that step for me but me.
Oh, that's
And
beautiful.
I think that's where it comes to all of us. Nobody can take your step for you but you.
Yeah. And Jay, I'm going to give you a fancy word for that idea of going where you are, from where you are to where you want to be. In my field, we call that, check it out, ready? Existential dynamics.
Wow.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
right?
I just got smarter by hearing that word.
Right. 2 words, and we just increase your knowledge, man.
Don't ask
Existential.
me to pronounce it back to you though.
Just don't bother spelling it, man. It's a hard one, but yeah, existential dynamics, going from where you are to where you want to be, where you feel yourself called to be. And again, what a beautiful analogy. It's taking that walk. It's the journey of life. It's hiking the mountain. It's one step at a time, as hard as it is. You and I were talking about, it's either uphill or downhill, or thank goodness every once in a while it might be flat, but very rarely in life is
Very
that journey
rarely.
flat, man.
Yep, that's so true. So true. I mean that, from a hiking standpoint, here's one of the things I learned on the Appalachian Trail is a lot. There's about 2 to 3,000 people a year attempt a through hike from Georgia to Maine or Maine to Georgia.
All right, hold
And
on, Jay. Back that up
yep.
because, right, I'm a big fan of the AT. I try to get on it whenever I can, put my foot on it. But for those that don't know, the Appalachian Trail, look, I'm not even going to try to describe it, right? I've only read about it. You've been on it 1,500 miles. What is the AT? What is the Appalachian Trail?
So it's a footpath that starts at Springer Mountain, Georgia, and travels up the East Coast basically, from Springer Mountain all the way to Mount Katahdin up in Maine. Just under 2,200 miles total. And you've got different people that do that. A through hiker is someone that will start, if they're going from north to south, typically a through hiker is someone that's going to start sometime between February, March, 1st of April is the latest typically, but they're going to go and it'll take anywhere from 4 to 6 months for them to complete that. And
Four to
they'll
six
go
months every day on the
every day.
trail.
Yeah, their job is a backpack on their back, hiking sticks in their hands, and feet moving down the trail. And they just get after it. I've met some incredible men and women that are out there, and the best thing I love is this: is you walk into one of the shelters. It's kind of a three-sided lean-to, can sleep anywhere from 6 people to maybe 15 people, depending on the size of it. And you walk in there and you meet some of these through hikers. You're like, oh my gosh, there is a convention of homeless people inside of the shelter. The way they look and the way they smell, you think homeless. You start talking to them. I've literally met a brain surgeon that out there, and he's talking about he's kind of got a sabbatical. He's doing this. I've met accountants. I've met you name it. I have met the people out there, and I've met some people that I think live on the trail and all of that too. But it's so you got those people that do that. You got people like me that are section hikers that will go out for a certain amount of time each year or whenever they can, and do that. You got day hikers that go out and just kind of hike part of that. And then I've met a lot of people that don't hike the length of the Appalachian Trail. They hike the width. They just walk across it and they go, yay, I've done that. That's what my father-in-law says. I'll never hike the length of it, but I'll hike the width of the Appalachian Trail. And so that's it. And so you got people out there from all walks of life, all purposes to get out there. And for me, it was just one of those goals. For whatever reason, when I was 40, I set that goal for myself that I wanted to hike it. And, I have learned so much along the way that who knew that hiking my big old body up and down a mountain would teach me some life lessons that I would never forget. And, that's been one of the greatest things for me. So,
Well, I know personally, hiking is such a any kind of physical activity, but especially hiking. Whether it's just a day hike in the local state park, or putting your life on your back in your backpack and going for a few days, is such a powerful metaphor for life, for living the journey, for getting out there and going through hard times. And it can be empowering to be like, man, I have been through some of the nastiest times out there on the trail, thinking I was going to die, freezing, shivering, sweating, hotter than blazes. And well, here I still am today. If you can survive stuff like that with a
yep,
45-degree walking up rocks and hills to a 45-degree downslope with the rain coming down, hoping you don't slip and run into your buddy and take his legs out.
so
Yeah,
true. Absolutely. Uh, some of those things I think about, I mean, the whole thing of, I think I wrote this quote down because I wanted to mention it. David Goggins, former Navy SEAL, phenomenal. Just he blows everybody out of the water when it comes
he
to
is an
physical stuff.
amazing human being.
Incredible.
Yeah.
But one of the things he said is this. He said, "Don't stop when you get tired. Stop when you are done." And there have been a lot of times when I've been hiking that I'm like, I am tired. I want to be done, but I'm still 5 miles from a shelter, or I'm still, 5 miles from a pickup or whatever. And you have to literally, another phrase he talks about is embracing the suck, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes that's what it is in life. And it's getting out there and doing that. And it's amazing when you push yourself physically beyond a limit that you have in your own mind, how in your day-to-day life your your capacity expands in a lot of different areas because you have pushed yourself physically, and it's amazing to see how that has lived out in my life. So it's probably expanded my thinking, my dreaming. I've always been a big dreamer and creative person, but I mean, when I can stand on one mountain and I see four ridges over another mountain where I'm going to be in 2.5 hours, and I'm like, how in the world? And then all of a sudden, 2.5 hours later, I'm sitting on that four peaks over, looking back at where I was, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what I did in 2.5 hours out here on the trail, maybe I can. What's it like if I get back home and turn those 2.5 hours? What can I really do with those 2.5 hours that I can either watch an Avengers movie, or I can get something done in my life, right? And it just kind of puts things in perspective out there.
I agree. As you're telling that story, I remember, I think it was mile marker 12, and we were going to 13.5, crossing a hot road. It's probably July or August. We're like, we're going to make this. And then we see that uphill come up, and that was time for all of us to embrace the suck. And, when we hike, we like to, get to our site relatively early and, make a campfire and kind of relax and be leisure and, maybe have a drink or something. And then, by the time we got to that mile marker, I'm not even sure everybody fully put their tent up before. I mean, there was snoring and sneezing, and it was, I mean, it was the sleep of the dead. But you're right. You get up the next morning and you get at it again. And by the time you get done with those few days out there on the trail, I mean, we still tell that story. It's written in my hiking journal somewhere. And it is a reminder that, yeah, if you could get through that kind of stuff, imagine what you can do a couple days focused on a task or a chore or some great goal you want to accomplish.
Yep.
And that's not just hiking, but that's running, swimming, any physical activity where you're like, man, I don't want to get up at 5 o'clock and do this. I have to go do it so that I'm ready for life.
Yep. Absolutely. I don't know. Just to me, it's finding a way to. What I have found is this: is a lot of quote unquote solutions I've needed in my life have come when I have been out doing something physical like that. That my brain is going in a different direction, and all of a sudden I see something to solve a problem that I wasn't even really focused on when I went out there to go hike or walk or do whatever. That all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, I never even thought about, and it's just, I don't know, kind of, it's a huge perspective change for me when I go hiking.
Yep, Jay. I mean, there's so much good neuroscience behind what you're saying. Getting fresh air, activity, getting the body moving, endorphins are flowing. And like you said, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the brain goes, "Oh yeah, here's your solution." Or even
Mm-hmm.
better, I mean, that's a lot of fun. The other side of that is taking one of those long walks, a good hike to the point of exhaustion, and you got a problem in your head that you can't think through, and all of a sudden you fall asleep, you sleep wonderfully, and you wake up the next morning, your brain's like, I got this, we got it all figured out. And you wake up, you're like, oh my goodness, why haven't I been thinking of this for the past 5 weeks? And you come up with a solution. So much good neuroscience there that you're absolutely right. Getting that physical activity, getting some fresh air, getting out there, hiking, walking, sharing that kind of stuff. Now, okay, Jay, I wrote it down here. I don't know if we said it in the podcast. Maybe we said it beforehand. 1,570.8 miles on the Appalachian Trail. How do you measure point eight, first of all?
Uh, One step at a time. No, the way I do that is so for me, I have I have an app on my phone. Used to be called Gut Hooks. It's called Far Out now, and it literally will track for me where I'm at, and so I plot myself along the way, and doing that. And so what I have found is a point eight on the trail is a lot further than a point A in normal life. Good gosh, because it's the last point eight that kills you.
Absolutely. So now that's interesting. As a bit of a hiking gear junkie myself, like you're out there for 2 weeks at a week and a half, 2 weeks. How are you keeping your phone charged?
So a couple different ways. I carry just one of those, power blocks with me. It's about the size of my cell phone. Um, the one I have has enough that I can most of the time charge my phone about 4 times from it. Um, so I carry one that's a little bit heavier because I want to be able to have that capacity to be able to do that. Um, but kind of our rhythm, the way when I got a buddy, his name's Greg Kidd. He's pretty much hiked every mile with me on the Appalachian Trail, and that's probably a whole nother conversation of don't hike by yourself in life and don't hike the trail alone. But
Oh, Jay, that's
um,
beautiful. Wait, repeat it. We won't go too deep. Repeat that. That's beautiful. That is a gold nugget right there.
yeah, just don't hike alone. Um, and because there's a lot of times that I want to quit and Greg kicks me in the butt to keep moving, or vice versa,
Hmm.
and it's just a whole lot easier to do that. I hike further because I hike with a partner, and so he and I have known each other. Our families have been close since our daughters were 1 year old, and that's been like 26 years ago.
Wow.
And so we've known each other for a long time. Our families have grown up together, but so kind of Greg and I's hiking pace is we'll be out on the trail 3 to 4 days, and then we'll kind of either hike into a town, depending on if it's, if it's probably less than 2 miles from the trail. If we can't get a quick ride, we'll just hike in and hike back out. And there's either we do that to a little, I have eaten some of the best hamburgers at some little convenience store joints that nobody ever has ever heard of and will never hear of. But I have sat there and ate an incredible burger from a I'm not even sure the health department knows the kitchen exists in that place, but it's the best burger. Sit there and eat it, and we're able to kind of recharge all of our electronic stuff while we're out there doing that, as well as ourselves physically. But kind of that's our thing. 3 or 4 days, then we kind of get off maybe for a day, or a half day, and then get back on. That's kind of our typical routine that way. And so that's how I from a an actual power standpoint for my phone. But there's probably even a lesson there, right? You can't you'll go further if you take the time to rest when you need it, and you can get back out there. There's, like I said, there's so much I go back and I pull. One of the things I wrote down is success comes from knowing when to keep going and when to stop.
Hmm.
And sometimes our roadblock to success in our life is because we have not stopped and rest. Because what you said earlier, I don't know you use some big long science terms on me, but basically is that when you push yourself physically, that rest that comes after is what opens up. Did you say endorphins, or you said some orphans, or some word there? I'm not sure what you said, but something, whatever, the way our brain processes after exertion and the proper rest that comes, that allows us to get back after it differently. And so, not, like, just like my power block needs to be recharged, I need to be recharged like that. And if not, I find myself just stumbling around out there, and it's like I don't feel like I'm making progress if I haven't been able to rest enough.
That's such a good point. And I think we live in a culture, specifically the culture here in the US, that we don't do that. We hear other cultures that, take a nice siesta in the middle of the work day, or take, my goodness, here it's amazing to hear somebody taking a week off and actually doing something. Most people take a week off to go work at home, or to do something else. And there's so many other healthier we have to recharge, whether it's a big goal or something you got to get done. The body needs to rest, the mind needs to rest. We need that rest to be able to go back at it and do it better and do it well. And I think that's another really good example of that.
Yeah, yeah,
I
it's been
tell you
it's
what,
been a
Jay.
great journey.
Yeah, I can't wait. So when are you heading back out on the trail? You said that's coming up here soon?
Yeah, I head out the end of the month. I'll be gone for 2 weeks up the end of September, 1st of October, and we'll be finishing up in Connecticut, Massachusetts, to get into Vermont. on this trip. So we'll probably be just south of the White Mountains when we finish. The White Mountains, the presidential, all of that stuff. When you get up to Vermont and New Hampshire, they when experts on the Appalachian Trail say this: 80% of the work on the Appalachian Trail is done in the last 20% of the trail, and so I don't know. We got some. We got some. They believe in switchbacks in the South. They don't believe in switchbacks in the North.
Straight up. Yeah, I've read and heard unpleasant rumors about the White Mountains and getting up there into Katahdin. So best
Yep.
of luck to you. You know, we talked about this beforehand, though. Many people go and through hikers are trying to knock out 20, 21, 22 miles a day so that they actually get it done before the bad
Right.
weather hits. I mean, when you're section hiking like that, would you say your pace was 10 to 12 miles a day?
Yeah, we've averaged, 10 is normal. The most we've ever done on the Appalachian Trail is 17 miles,
Whoa.
which is a long way. Now, I not the longest I've ever walked continuous. This is not on the trail, but every year my birthday, I set a goal that I want to, like when I was 50, I knew I was never going to walk. I was never going to run a marathon. So I'm like, I'm going to walk one. So where I live, I paced out on the Google Maps 26 point whatever that miles is away. And on my birthday, it ended up being 28 miles, and I walked 28 miles to back to my house. The next year, I set one. I walked from here to a neighboring city, which ended up being 31.6. And then just the end of last year, I had set a goal. End of fall of last year, set a goal. I wanted to see how far I could walk in 24 hours. And so in 24 hours, I walked 50.1 miles in 24 hours. That's the furthest I've ever walked continuous. Basic. I mean, I rest from time to time while I'm walking,
Sure.
like I have to, but in a 24-hour period, 50.1 miles is the most I've ever walked. And that was on the Silver Comet Trail that goes from Alabama. Started at the Alabama line, Alabama Georgia line, and walked all the way to Hiram, Georgia. 50.1 miles on the Silver Comet Trail. So in
All right,
24
Jay.
hours.
What I mean, my feet hurt just talking about. I'm literally like running my foot across a massage ball right now because it hurts so bad. Like, how? What do you? These are not in flip flops. I mean, what for all of you hikers or walkers out there? What do you got on your feet, Jay? Let's get a little gear shout out.
Yeah. So typically, I have a pair of Under Armour hiking boots that I do on the Appalachian Trail. They're super light. They've been really good. It's about time to replace them. I got those just before I got into Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is the rockiest place in the
Mhm.
entire planet. Best quote I know about Pennsylvania, I was meeting a through hiker. He was going south. Me and him and Greg were sitting in the shelter, and he said, "Look, if it was my choice, I would drop a nuclear bomb on Pennsylvania and blow it up because I hate the rocks that much." Um,
Wow.
but that's what I hike there. I have that pair that I use. They're kind of mid ankle. They're not super huge boots, but
So
that's
not
what I
not
use.
the full ankle support, but a mid ankle support.
Yeah, kind of a mid ankle.
Okay.
But walking at the house or walking on the road or doing the 50 on like the Silver Comet Trail is an old railway that they have actually paved, put asphalt down through it. It's I don't know 8 feet wide, so two bikes can pass or whatever. But on that, I have a pair of New Balance that I use that I've walked with that for a long time.
Of course you do,
Um,
Jay. You're over 50. Doesn't that come with your 50th birthday? Is every man gets a
It
pair of
does,
New
but
Balance?
these are not the old dad shoes. This is actually a pair of what I love is the baseball turf shoes that New
Oh,
Balance makes, and those have been the sole of those last longer than any shoe that I wear when I walk on hard surfaces, and so it's not the typical white with the blue in with dark socks and a pair of shorts. Dark socks pulled up to your knees, pair of short dad New Balance. But that's usually what I use when I do those long trips like that.
that's awesome. Man, okay, so once you get back from the AT and you have, I'm gonna say, what, you're probably gonna be over 1,600 miles by then?
Yeah, I think we average. I figured it up. We average about 110 to 120 miles each trip.
That's
So
awesome. That's awesome. We're gonna have to talk when you get back and hear about the new lessons you learn now. For those that want to find out more about Hike the Mountain and your Instagram videos, where can people find you, Jay?
Yeah. So website is just hikethemountain.org. Had to go with org because .com had already been taken. So hikethemountain.org. You can email me at Jay, that's Jay, at hikethemountain.org. Or on Instagram is just Jay at Hike the Mountain, and you can find me there and follow me there. And at the heart, what is Hike the Mountain? I'm a speaker. I'm a coach when it comes to that, and I can, whether that's coaching from a organizational or a personal, was what I do with Hike the Mountain. So if I can say one other thing real quick, we started back in February an online church. It's called simplychurch.online. And we go live on Facebook. You can find that simplychurch.online. We do that every Sunday at 6:30. Right now, again, I know this, not every view means somebody sat there and listened to the whole thing, but I was hoping we'd have about 50 people when we started that on average in the first week. And right now we're averaging about 215 people that connect with that in some form or fashion. So kind of another thing that's going on. But man, just, hey, message me, look on, shoot me an email, whatever. I'd love to talk with individuals or organizations about hiking the mountains when it comes to their culture, individually and organizationally.
And as you can tell here, Jay does enjoy talking. I know every conversation we've ever had over however long we've known each other, the past year or two, has always resulted in me learning a little bit more. I'm glad I could teach you about existential dynamics today and
You had to
orphan
text me how that is even
endorphins.
spelled. Yeah, you said something about orphans too. I'm not sure what that was.
Right. Hey, Jay, always a pleasure, man. Can't wait to hear about the trip when you get back. Happy trails. Be safe out there.
Thanks, buddy. Hike on, my friend.
Take care.